EMP series character backstories. Greg. Greg was born in 1953 in a small town in rural Oregon. He grew up poor and from a broken home. His dad, a drunkard, left the family to fend for themselves when he fled in the middle of the night to get away from a bookie to whom he owed a lot of money. Greg's dad was a gambler, and a bad one at that. His mom was a hard worker who struggled to keep the family together before and after his dad left. She had confided to her sister that it was actually easier on her after he left. She gave up counting how many mornings she woke up disappointed in her husband and his inability to control his addiction. Greg worked odd jobs after school to help support his mom and 3 siblings. In high school, he enlisted in the Marine Corps on a deferment until after he graduated. There, he continued to send the majority of his paycheck home to help his mom. After he served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, he was honorably discharged and went home. He had developed a drinking problem while in the service, and then ended up marrying a woman he met in a bar a year later. Their marriage started disintegrating almost immediately. His wife was a drunk and a casual drug user. One day, Greg returned home early from work to find her in bed with a man who frequented a bar that they were both regulars at. Her boyfriend didn't work. He collected welfare and sold drugs. Greg, infuriated, threw the man through a French door. He was hospitalized for broken ribs and several severe cuts and bruises. Greg had just finished building the house out in the country, and they had just moved into it a couple months earlier. His wife filed for divorce, and in court made Greg out to be a violent alcoholic abuser. She showed the judge pictures of her boyfriend the night he was in the ER. The judge awarded her the house. She moved her new boyfriend in the next day. Several months later, a Molotov cocktail smashed through the living room window, sending Greg's ex-wife and her boyfriend out into the freezing cold, dark night. They watched as the house burned to the ground with everything they owned inside. The state police questioned Greg extensively on several occasions with no results, and eventually closed the case from lack of evidence. They firmly believed that Greg was responsible, but were thoroughly unable to prove it. 2 years later, he met Lee, his current wife. They dated, had a brief engagement, and were married a year later. She brought him to church, where he eventually got saved. He stopped drinking and devoted his life to the Lord and to her. He worked 30 years at a factory that supplied parts for military weapons systems, working his way up to foreman of his department. He retired 2 years ago. Lee retired from her job in management with a large hotel chain a year later, and they now live and work together with us at the church. They have 2 grown sons who have families of their own and live out of state. They have not heard from them since the EMP attack.